Well, welcome in LSU fans. My name is Bryce Koon here on the Go 24/7 YouTube channel, Twitter, and my own personal Twitter here. Not live on Facebook tonight, but we're going to get that corrected for you. As a big win for the Tigers, LSU wins 42-10 against the South Alabama Jaguars. And yeah, we all had to catch the end of what was happening in that Georgia Alabama game. Absolutely nuts. A crazy ending. The SEC with some phenomenal games this week, and just in Saturday in general was absolutely crazy. But we're talking about the LSU Tigers and kind of what's going on in this contest. What's being looked at as some of the big factors. Get some of your thoughts, and then obviously take a look at what this means going into a pivotal bye week. So let's talk Garrett Nussmeier. Let's kind of start there. Garrett Nussmeier in this game, you could not have asked for a better start to the football game than what we saw, obviously, there on Saturday. Caden Durham, 7 carries, 128 yards, a touchdown. He obviously had the big passing play as well, 3 catches for 89 yards, and had the 71-yard touchdown on kind of the swing screen pass, whatever you want to call it. But Caden Durham has assumed the leadership position at this running back, in this running back room. I mean, this is your guy. This is the guy that the straw that stirs the drink. This is the game changer, the down the field threat, whatever you want to call Caden Durham. He's that and more for this LSU football team. Now, I know that everyone's going to say, and I'll say it as well, you have to take tonight with a grain of salt, being a Sun Belt team in South Alabama. This is probably one of the better Sun Belt teams, though, in that conference, teams in the Sun Belt Conference. And you still have to go out there and execute. There's still 11 other guys on the other side of the football that have to go do work. And so I'm super, super impressed with how LSU can handle themselves, how they handled the environment of terms of great environment, didn't get too emotionally high, stayed the course in that first half. We'll talk about the second half, but really a first half that you could not have asked for just anything. I mean, absolute, I don't want to say dominance. I want to be careful how I say that. But you take a look at the first half stats, obviously 35-3. You had 429 total yards if you were LSU. You had obviously the touchdowns. You ran for an average of 14.6 yards per carry. And one of the numbers that I had said, you're going to have to keep South Alabama, who averaged around 7 yards a carry, to under 5. Well, you kept them to 2.3 per carry. That works. So obviously 254 through the air, just 2 penalties. You had 15 first downs in that first half. You didn't win time possession because you were scoring so quickly. You did have a turnover and you allowed 2 sacks. But in general, what LSU was able to do in this first half, uh, picture perfect. It's a picture perfect first half for what you want to accomplish. It's a picture perfect first half for setting the tone in a football game. Brian Kelly's talked so much about playing complementary football, and we've seen that. Folks, we've seen that in spurts. In the first half, you saw this defense making some big plays, and you saw a lot of different things you have to like. Greg Penn finished with 14 total tackles, 7 by himself. Whit Weeks was a man amongst boys in the football field. He had a pass breakup, a tackle for loss, and then obviously 9 tackles. Major Burns with 8, Deshaun Spears, Jordan Gilbert, Savion Jones, Ashton Stamps kind of round out the rest of that list. I even like the kick return game a little bit. You only got to return 2, but you averaged 31. Xavier Thomas had the 39-yarder with a massive block by Josh Williams there on the return. So obviously, really like what you kind of saw in that as well. You didn't kick a field goal. Caden Durham, 217 all-purpose yards. Xavier Thomas with 111, and Kyron Lacey with 107. We talked about the second, or being able to run the football. You ran the ball for 126 yards in the first quarter, 49 in the second, 17 in the third. And I'm going to get to that second half. And then obviously 45 yards in the fourth quarter as well. Your leading receivers, Aaron Anderson, was the leading in number of catches with 6 of them. He had 73 yards. Lacey with 5 for 107. Durham 3 for 89. Taylor 3 for 43. This was a first half that you could only dream of. And I want to not take away, because South Alabama is a good team, and that's going to be a team that's going to make a bowl game. They're going to challenge for the Sun Belt Conference. In the first half, you took care of business. You did exactly what you needed to do. You imposed your will against a team that was less talented than you, and it showed. I mean, the talk coming into this game, because the talk coming in this game, like I'm saying, was that maybe you couldn't do that. You haven't done that to a certain extent. And just in terms of generality of being able to move the football, being able to impose your will up front with the offensive line, you didn't do it against Nicholls State, who's an inferior opponent to this team. So being able to start like that in this game is huge. It's massive in terms of confidence building and seeing, hey, we're talking about it, but now we're doing it. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I have from that first half. Really, really like that. In terms of big plays, where can you start with obviously what LSU was able to do? 12 plays, passing plays of 15 yards or more. Garrett Nussmeier was on fire in that first and second quarter in terms of what he was able to do with obviously 7 of those. And then in the run game, you had 4 of your 6 rushing plays, excuse me, of 10 yards or more. You were able to do things. Obviously, the 86-yard run there from Caden Durham, 26 from Xavion Thomas. No touchdown runs, obviously, on that one. But this was a offensive performance, a defensive performance in the first half. You stifled a good offense, regardless of what you feel like. Sorry, excuse me. Statistically, you stifled a good offense. And you did what you're supposed to do. Really like the way that they played offensively, like the way they combated it defensively as well. So love what we saw out of this LSU team in the first half. Now it brings me to the second half. Okay. I entered this show, and as I was kind of taking a couple notes, I wrote maybe just a little frustrated. And I think that's the word that Brian Kelly would use. I haven't got a chance to watch the post game presser. I want to, and I will. But you finish with 667 yards of total offense, which is it's impressive. 8.8 yards per carry. I mean, you did what you do, but largely that's going to be due to some inflated first half stats. The second half, you only scored 7 points. You did have 238 yards. It was mostly empty, and then the 2 interceptions from Garrett Nussmeier, which uncharacteristic, I would say. Bad decisions is what we could also put that through. Just not clean. Defensively, I don't feel like you very tackled as well as you wanted. Um, I, I, this was a group in the second half that didn't play as clean as they needed to, and it kind of showed. Now, South Alabama was only able to muster 7 points, but you can't do that against better teams and expect to coast to a win. When Ole Miss comes into town, I know they lost to Kentucky this past week or yesterday on Saturday, but you can't expect to coast into the second half. And we still have yet to see this LSU team play a full 60 minutes. Brian Kelly did mention that on the broadcast, and in terms of the post-game broadcast interview, he said, I would like to see us play, 4 quarters, but that was a good team. We took care of business. And I think that's kind of the theme of the show is first half, a dream scenario for this team. The second half, a lot of things kind of reared its ugly head. A lot of things that you would have liked to see happen, they didn't happen. And now you're kind of left with not picking up the pieces, but you're kind of left with saying, okay, how can we make what happened in the first half carry over and not let that lull happen? Because if it does, and I'm sure a lot of folks just watch what happened over in Tuscaloosa, that's what happens. Alabama dominated, dream scenario in the first half. They get to the second half, and a really good ball club in Georgia able to fight back, claw back, and make that a ball game where it was literally decided in the last minute. So this is a game where you could get away with it. You did. And now you move into the bye week with a plan, some new concepts, comfortability, and maybe some of the plays that you were running, where you were entering what I do believe is probably one of the most impactful games, if not the most impactful game in Brian Kelly's tenure at LSU. Ole Miss comes to town. Ole Miss drops a game. This is for the SEC race. I know we don't like talking about playoff football this early in the season, but it's going to be week number 7, and we got to mention it. This could be a de facto playoff game for LSU if they want to reach that 12-team playoff, and maybe Ole Miss as well. Ole Miss's strength of schedule is not quite what LSU's is, and that'll be interesting to see. But just kind of obviously takeaways. You go into the bye week. Look, folks, it's not a secret. I mean, Caden Durham's the number 1 back. You use Josh Williams. You use Caleb Jackson when and where you want them. Caden Durham's the guy. The explosiveness, this decisiveness to hit the hole with authority, the vision that he carries, the balance that he carries as a running back. You don't find that in many guys at that age. Really, you don't find that in many guys in general, but at that age, it's very rare. And you got something special, I think, in Caden Durham in the backfield. So I'm excited to see how they go into the bye week with even more prep time. Things that maybe he is still working up to speed in. Now things get to slow down this week. Now he gets to get into the film room. Now he gets to work alongside that offensive line to understand blocking concepts. Because Ole Miss has got a defensive line that'll come after you in 2 weeks. So Caden Durham to me is the biggest story out of this game in terms of you found a complementary piece in the running game to help offset what you could do in the passing game. 409 through the air for Garrett Nussmeier, the 2 touchdowns, the 2 interceptions. Sloppy there in the second half, bad decision making. We saw Brian Kelly obviously not happy with that and let it be known to Garrett Nussmeier. But I think that's good. You need that. You need the accountability when the game's out of hand because that's what the elite teams do in college football. It's what the great teams do in college football. So really like what we saw overall. Ricky Collins getting in there 3 for 3, 21 yards. Also ran the ball a little bit, had 14 carries there as well. Juwan Johnson got some time. But folks, we're really starting to see this core 3 of receivers start to take shape. Aaron Anderson, Kyron Lacey, and Mason Taylor. And then you offset that with CJ Daniels getting sprinkled in. Caden Durham's a weapon in the passing game. Oh, and I haven't mentioned Xavion Thomas. I don't want to overlook or put down, but it really has mitigated any potential loss you thought you might have in Chris Hilton. Chris Hilton was probable to play in this game. Obviously, didn't suit up. We did not get that SEC, player availability report because it's not an SEC game. So that's part of this. Obviously, it'll be something interesting to ask Brian Kelly next week and then heading into the bye week because you'd like to have him going into Ole Miss, but the question has to be asked. You don't want to disrupt what you have in the offense because now you have what I think is a guy in CJ Daniels that's coming along and becoming and finding his role, his niche after being a number 1 guy at Liberty last year, finding his role in this offense. And then Caden Durham, who is, I mean, guys, he's not just like a guy that, he can go out and play in space. He's a bona fide legit weapon. He's one of the best tailbacks right now in the SEC. He's one of the best freshman running backs in the country, and he's playing like it. This is a kid who's an all SEC freshman candidate right now. Love the way that Caden Durham has played. So those are some of my takeaways. Caden Durham, Garrett Nussmeier, you got to make better decisions in the second half. Did we get a little lax? Did we get a little too comfortable? I'm not sure. I'm not sure to that. And then defensively, let's talk a little bit about what South Alabama was able to do in that second half, which you could say, okay, Bryce, that's a little concerning. But, South Alabama finished this game with a total of 333 yards. 209 of those came in the second half. They ran the ball that went an uptick to 4.9 yards per carry. They threw the ball for 140. They had 10 first downs. They were 3 for 6 on third downs. That was another sticky note stat that I had written down and told you to be on the lookout for. You keep them. This is a team that was right around 49%. If you could keep them below 40, you were going to win the football game. They keep South Alabama below 29%, 4 of 14. The Jaguars went. So you see the sticky note stats, how that works out. That's really, really impressive. LSU obviously with 3 sacks as well. That's huge. I mean, just huge in what they're able to, in terms of what they were able to do. We talked about big plays. We talked about capitalizing on those. I mentioned South Alabama's a team that struggled giving up big plays. You saw in the trenches, LSU had the advantage. But here's kind of the final takeaway of this. We've mentioned a lot of different things. It's one thing to know that you have the advantage. It's one thing to go out there and say, on paper, player X, Y, and Z on our team is better than player X, Y, and Z on their team. And that's the matchup we're looking at. It's one thing to look at that. It's another thing to go out and execute it. And for 30 minutes, LSU executed that to near perfection. The other 30 minutes, they didn't. You're not going to get away with that when you go into SEC play. You're not going to get away with that when Ole Miss comes into town in 2 weeks. You got away with it today. I think that's the message coming out of this game is good win. You did what you need to do. You took care of business, but you need to play a full 60 if this team is going to continue to roll and with a massive matchup coming against Ole Miss on October the 12th. LSU wins 42-10 over South Alabama. That concludes the non-conference slate and a big win. A big win. They needed this. Get in the bye week. Get healthy. Caden Durham did come back under his own power out of the locker room. That's something that's massive. Had the shoulder pads on. So you monitor that. Get these guys some rest. Get healthy and prepare for what should be a raucous Tiger Stadium on October the 12th. My name is Bryce Koon. This is the Go 24/7 podcast. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Instant reaction show where we talk a little bit of everything. And thanks so much for liking the video, sharing the content. If you're watching on our Twitter Spaces or wherever you're watching that, head over to YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a follow over there and check out all the content over at Go 24/7. We have a great staff: Glenn West, Sonny Ship, and myself. This is Bryce Koon signing off on a Saturday night. This is the Go 24/7 Instant Reaction podcast. Final score: LSU 42.